Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. This time we're diving into, well, culture.
Yeah, but not just culture, in general. We're
Right.
really going to be looking at how individuals experience different cultures
Hmm.
and what that can tell us about how cultures mix and change, you know?
Yeah, that push and pull between holding on to your own traditions,
Right.
but also kind of like embracing this globalized world. We've
Exactly.
got some fascinating sources to work with here. A
Yeah.
whole overview of global reading cultures, for
Yeah.
one thing,
Hmm.
and then we've got excerpts from all these different travelogues and autobiographies from all over the world and across
Oh,
centuries.
wow.
We'll even be looking at a little bit of classic literature.
It's amazing to see how all these sources, even though they come from such different times and places, kind of end up asking some of the same questions.
Like what?
Like, what even is culture? How can we make sense of cultures that are really different from our own? And then how do those encounters with other cultures actually change us?
Good questions.
Yeah.
And one of the sources we're looking at kind of jumps right into this.
Okay.
This quote from the scholar Raymond Williams.
Okay.
It says, culture is ordinary.
Culture is ordinary.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It sounds simple on the surface, I guess,
Yeah.
but I think it's actually a really insightful idea.
Oh, absolutely.
What do you think he means by that?
Well, Williams is getting at the idea that culture isn't just this fancy highbrow thing. It's actually the stuff of everyday life.
Yeah.
You know, the food that we eat,
Right.
the clothes we wear,
Yeah.
how we say hello to each other, the stories we tell our kids.
Okay.
These are all expressions of culture, and every society has its own unique way of doing those things.
Right, but not all cultures have the same influence on a global scale, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Like some cultures are definitely more prominent than others.
Exactly, and that's where this idea of hegemonic cultures comes in. Hegemonic cultures are the ones that, for whatever reason, kind of hold more sway globally.
Yeah.
Like, think about American culture.
Yeah.
It's not just about movies and music, right? It's the fashion, the tech, the food.
Right.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And one of the sources we're looking at actually focuses on how American culture is impacting young people in Morocco.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's not just cultures kind of existing side by side.
Right.
There's also this constant mixing and blending going on.
Exactly. That's what we call hybridity.
Hybridity.
Yeah, the mixing of different cultural elements.
Hmm.
Think about, your favorite foods, the music you listen to,
Hmm.
even the way you decorate your home.
Yeah.
I mean, how many different cultural influences can you spot?
It's a good point.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder what it's like to, actually encounter a completely different culture firsthand.
Oh, yeah.
To go beyond reading about it.
Yeah.
To really experience that kind of shock of the unfamiliar.
That's where the real learning happens. When you step outside of your comfort zone and you enter this culture that has completely different social norms and values,
Right.
even different ways of communicating,
Wow.
it makes you question everything you thought you knew.
Yeah. It definitely challenges your assumptions.
For sure.
Well, speaking of stepping into another world, we have these amazing firsthand accounts from travelers and immigrants in our sources.
Oh, cool.
One that I found really fascinating is from Ibn Battuta.
Ibn Battuta.
Yeah, he was this 14th century Moroccan scholar.
Wow.
He was basically like a globe-trotting rock star back then.
Uh-huh. Wow.
I mean, imagine traveling the world back then. No
Yeah.
planes, no internet,
Right.
just pure curiosity and a thirst for adventure.
His writings are like a window into the past.
Mhm.
This world that's so different from our own.
Right, and he had these really interesting observations about China, which at that time must have seemed like another planet to him.
Like what?
Well, he talks about their economic practices, for example. He mentions that they were using paper money in the 14th century.
Paper money in the 14th century.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
That's wild.
I know. And he knows how gold and silver were seen as status symbols
Mhm.
and how strict their trade regulations were.
It's amazing to think about globalization in some form happening centuries ago.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But what I really love about Ibn Battuta's account is how he captures not just the economics, but the cultural nuances. He talks about religious practices,
Okay.
how Muslims were treated,
Yeah.
the skill of the Chinese artisans.
He really brings it to life with all those vivid details.
Right.
Yeah, like how they would meticulously document the appearance of every single traveler who entered and left the country.
It's amazing.
He even met this recluse who was said to be over 200 years old, living a totally solitary life devoted to spirituality.
Wow.
It really makes you appreciate how interconnected our world is today and how much we take it for granted.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fascinating.
And then we jump ahead several centuries to a book called Through Brown Eyes.
Through Brown Eyes.
Yeah, it's by Profilo Mohanty.
Okay.
It's his personal account of immigrating to London from India in the 1960s.
Wow, what a change that must have been.
Right.
Yeah.
And he really experienced culture shock firsthand.
He did.
Oh, yeah.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, he talks about how jarring it was to try and navigate British social norms.
Hmm.
He was used to a completely different way of interacting with people in India.
Yeah.
So everything from like emotional reserve and politeness
Right.
to just attitudes towards strangers,
Mm.
it all felt completely foreign to him.
Wow.
He has these really poignant anecdotes.
Like what?
Well, one time, a man refused to sell him a ticket until he said please.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then demanded a thank you afterwards.
Yeah.
And then another time, a woman kind of shoved him aside to take the only seat on the train.
Oh, no.
But then she immediately apologized.
Ah.
He found these encounters really hollow.
Oh, I see.
Like the politeness felt very superficial.
Right.
It didn't feel like genuine care at all.
It's interesting how he picks up on that.
Yeah.
It really highlights all these unspoken rules and social cues that we navigate every day without even realizing it, and how different those can be across cultures.
Yeah. It's almost like learning a whole new language.
Right.
But a language that's made up of like gestures and tone of voice and eye contact.
Exactly.
Do you ever experience that kind of disconnect?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like
Yeah.
feeling totally out of sync with someone from a different background, it can be really disorienting.
It can be.
Yeah.
Now, things get a little more complex with our next source.
Okay.
It's not a firsthand account like the others.
Ooh.
It's actually a critique of someone else's experience.
Interesting.
It analyzes this book called American Chick in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
It's written by Jean Sasson.
Okay.
And the critique really raises some important questions about like how we perceive and portray other cultures.
So this is where this idea of Orientalism comes into play.
Orientalism.
Yeah, it's a term that Edward Said coined to describe how the West tends to view the East through this distorted lens,
Oh,
often one that's based on stereotypes and this sense of Western superiority.
right.
And the critique argues that Sasson's book might actually be reinforcing these stereotypes.
Like how?
Well, particularly around the roles of women in Saudi society.
Oh, okay.
It suggests that she's looking at things from a very Western perspective, judging practices like the veil without really understanding their cultural and religious significance.
It's not about saying we can't ever critique other cultures. Right.
Right, exactly.
Or that all practices are like equally valid.
Yeah.
But I think it's about recognizing that our own backgrounds and biases really do shape how we see the world.
Absolutely.
And we have a responsibility to at least try to be aware of that.
Yeah, to seek out different perspectives, to
Right.
really challenge our assumptions, and to be careful that we're not just perpetuating harmful stereotypes.
Right. It's important to be mindful of where we're getting our information from,
Yeah, for sure.
to make sure it's coming from a variety of sources.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating how these firsthand accounts from Ibn Battuta and Profilo Mohanty,
Yeah.
they really challenge this idea of a single dominant global culture.
Mm-hmm.
They remind us that even in our increasingly interconnected world, there's this vast spectrum of human experience.
Right. It's like adding all these layers of detail to that global village concept.
Exactly.
It's not just one big melting pot. It's
Correct.
more like a mosaic.
Yeah, like that.
All these different pieces coming together to create something complex and beautiful.
And it's about navigating those differences with,
Yeah.
sensitivity and a
Yeah.
willingness to learn.
Absolutely.
Encountering a different culture isn't just about observing the exotic,
Right.
It's about really trying to understand the systems of meaning, the values, the beliefs that shape people's lives.
It's about recognizing the humanity in everyone, regardless of their background or beliefs.
Exactly.
That's what matters.
And to explore these themes even further, we're actually going to dive into the world of literature.
Oh.
Because sometimes fiction can give us a really powerful lens through which to understand these complexities of culture and power.
Right. It lets us step into these different worlds and see things from perspectives other than our own.
Right.
And grapple with these challenging questions in a safe space.
Exactly.
It's a powerful tool.
So we're going to start with a classic,
Okay.
Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe.
Robinson Crusoe. Oh, yeah.
We have an excerpt that focuses on Crusoe's relationship with
Friday.
the native islander that he
Yeah.
rescues.
Rescues, haha.
I put that in quotes for a reason.
Okay.
While it is a really engaging story,
It is.
it's very much a product of its time,
Hmm.
with Crusoe really embodying that colonial mindset, you know?
Oh, okay.
He believes that European culture is superior and that it's his duty to civilize Friday.
I see.
He literally names Friday, teaches him English, tries to impose his own customs and beliefs.
It's interesting how Defoe, maybe unintentionally, reveals the kind of prevailing attitudes of his era,
Yeah.
just in the way he tells the story.
Right.
And that act of naming is really significant.
Mm.
It's a way of asserting power, of claiming ownership. By giving Friday a new name, Crusoe is basically trying to erase his identity
Wow.
and mold him into something he's not.
It's a stark reminder of, the legacy of colonialism.
Yeah.
And how deeply ingrained those power dynamics can be.
Even in a story about, adventure and survival, we
Mhm.
see these themes playing out in
Yeah.
subtle but powerful ways.
And speaking of powerful narratives, our final source for this part of the deep dive is Olaudah Equiano's autobiography.
Olaudah Equiano.
I've heard of him.
This is a really harrowing account of the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade.
Wow.
Equiano was kidnapped from Africa as a child. Oh, wow.
And he details his experiences with incredible courage and honesty.
It must be a difficult read.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a story of unimaginable suffering,
Mm.
but also incredible resilience. He describes being renamed Gustavus Vasa against his will.
Wow.
The constant fear of being eaten,
Oh, my gosh.
the cultural and linguistic barriers he faced.
Right.
But he also talks about finding some solace in his friendship with another captive
Oh, good.
and his growing understanding of Christianity.
I see.
What's really remarkable about Equiano's story is that it's not just a personal account of trauma.
Right.
It's a powerful indictment of the slave trade itself
Hmm.
and a call for justice.
Yeah.
He actually later became a very prominent abolitionist,
Wow.
and he used his experiences to advocate for change.
His story shows how personal narratives can really expose injustice and inspire us to work towards a more equitable world.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
amazing how Equiano was able to, channel that experience into something positive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It really shows the power of storytelling.
Right.
His narrative wasn't just about, his personal suffering.
Right.
It was about shining a light on this whole system of oppression, forcing people to confront just how inhumane it was.
Yeah, and it makes you think about the impact our own stories can have, even if they're on a much smaller scale.
Right.
Have you ever shared a personal experience that really changed someone's perspective?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it happens all the time, actually.
Right.
The more we're willing to open up
Yeah.
and share our authentic selves, the more we kind of encourage others to do the same.
Yeah.
And that's how we build real connection and understanding.
I love that.
Yeah.
Speaking of connection, we've been talking a lot about cultural differences.
Right.
But what about the things that actually connect us as human beings?
That's where the idea of universal values comes in.
Okay.
These are values that are thought to be shared by all humans,
Mhm.
regardless of cultural background.
Like what?
Like compassion, fairness, a sense of belonging.
Right.
These are kind of the threads that weave together the tapestry of human experience.
So even though cultures might express these values in different ways,
Yeah.
the underlying principles are something we all have in common.
Exactly. It's like we're all speaking different languages,
Yeah.
but the message is ultimately the same.
It's like looking at a mosaic.
Oh, I like that. Each tile is unique,
Right.
but together they create this beautiful, intricate whole.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing,
And it's important to remember that culture isn't static.
right?
It's constantly changing and evolving.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, it's shaped by so many factors,
Now
like
what?
history, geography, politics, technology, and of course the constant interactions between people.
Yeah, so we can't just rely on stereotypes or generalizations.
Exactly.
We have to be open to nuance,
Yeah.
challenge our assumptions, and acknowledge that our own understanding of culture is always evolving too.
It's like we're all on this journey of discovery together.
Mm.
The more we learn, the more we experience, the more our perspectives shift and change.
Right, and that's what makes it so exciting.
Exactly.
I'm curious, how do you personally challenge your own assumptions about other cultures?
Well, for me, it's about actively seeking out different perspectives.
Yeah.
Like reading books and articles by people from different backgrounds, watching films and documentaries that offer different points of view.
Yeah.
And just talking to people who have had different life experiences than my own.
Yeah, that's so important.
It is.
What about you? I find that traveling is a really great way to challenge my assumptions.
Oh, yeah.
When you're immersed in a different culture, you can't help but see the world in a new way.
Traveling is a fantastic way to broaden your horizons. But even if you can't hop on a plane,
Yeah.
there are so many ways to engage with different cultures, right where we are.
Absolutely, like visiting museums,
Yeah.
attending cultural festivals, trying new foods,
Yeah.
learning a new language.
There's a whole world of cultural exploration waiting to be discovered.
And those experiences don't just enrich our lives. They also make us better global citizens.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the more we understand and appreciate different cultures,
Yeah.
the more equipped we are to work together to tackle global challenges.
Exactly. It's all connected.
So what does it all mean?
Yeah.
We've journeyed through centuries and across continents, exploring these complexities of cultural encounters and adaptation. We've looked at colonial mindsets,
Right?
challenged stereotypical portrayals, and acknowledged the power of personal stories to shape how we understand the world.
We've delved into that concept of universal values,
Right.
highlighting those threads that connect us as human beings
Yeah.
despite our differences.
And we've emphasized the importance of ongoing learning, curiosity, and being willing to challenge our own assumptions.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear what's resonated most with you.
What insights will you be taking away from this deep dive?
Yeah.
What questions will you continue to explore?
We want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to ponder.
Okay.
As you continue your own exploration of culture and its complexities
Mm-hmm.
in an increasingly globalized world,
Yeah.
how can we balance the appreciation of different cultures
Right.
with the need to challenge injustices
Right.
and promote understanding?
It's a complex question,
It is,
Yeah.
with no easy answers.
but it's definitely one worth thinking about.
Because ultimately, building a more just and equitable world requires us to be more than just observers of culture.
Right. We need to be active participants, engaged citizens, and lifelong learners,
Yeah.
committed to fostering connection, empathy,
Hmm.
and a deeper appreciation for the richness and diversity of human experience.
Yeah, it's a big challenge.
It is.
But I think it starts with us, like just trying to be more mindful in our everyday lives.
Right.
Like the language we use,
Yeah.
the assumptions we make, the way we interact with people from different backgrounds.
Being willing to listen,
Right.
to learn,
Yeah.
to grow, to accept that our perspective is just one of many
Right.
and that there's always more to learn.
And sometimes that learning can start with something as simple as a book.
Oh, absolutely.
All the stories we've explored today,
Yeah.
Ibn Battusta's adventures, Equiano's incredible narrative,
Mm-hmm.
they remind us that literature can be such a powerful tool
It really can.
for building empathy and understanding.
It's like those books are portals, to different times and places,
Right.
letting us walk in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
And see the world through their eyes.
And maybe, just maybe,
yeah.
those stories can inspire us to create a world where those portals aren't even necessary,
Wow.
where understanding and empathy are just like the norm.
Right.
And where everyone feels seen and heard and valued.
What a beautiful thought.
It is.
It's a world worth striving for.
Mm.
And I think it's a world we can create.
Yeah.
One story, one conversation, one act of kindness at a time.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Mm.
we want to encourage you all to keep exploring,
Yes.
keep questioning.
Keep connecting.
Yeah. Dive into the books we've talked about,
Mm.
seek out other voices and perspectives.
Right.
And most importantly, bring those insights into your own interactions with the world.
Because the more we understand each other,
Yeah.
the more we appreciate our shared humanity,
Mm.
the closer we get to building that world.
Right, where cultural differences are celebrated,
Yeah.
injustices are challenged, and understanding prevails.
I like that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep those conversations going.